Well, it's been an interesting day in politics today. I mean, it's amazing how people are responding, actually. There's a lot more positive response from the general public to Boris Johnson and trying to support him. When you talk to people who are commentating and referring to what's going on from the BBC, ITV, Sky News, Radio 5, whatever, they're sort of not really saying favourable things about Boris Johnson as our Prime Minister. And obviously, the opposition and the rebels and the liberals and the Scottish nationalists have also got very little positive to say about our Prime Minister. People who do have positive things to say about our Prime Minister are the general public, people like myself and lots like me. And that's what's so good. I mean, I think that's why if there was to be an election, I think it would be a Boris Johnson victory through and through. The problem is there's been a sort of everyone's saying they can't trust Boris Johnson, but Boris always tried to do, okay, you're not allowing me to proceed with, you're forcing my hand to actually go for an extension, which I'm not going to do. I'd rather go and die in a ditch, that's his words, than actually ask for an extension. So he's got very little time to sort something out. And he's got the other parties that have ganged up on him to actually force this issue in law. Now, he's said he's not going to do it, and he said, let's have an election. They don't want an election because they know they'd lose an election. So we're in a bit of a situation with British politics that we've never, ever had before. Well, what's the answer? Well, I think the answer is we've just got to stay cool to our situation here. There is going to be an election at some point in time. There is no doubt in my mind, most people in the UK, sensible people, whether they were Remainers or Leavers in the past, they want an end to this, and they want to see their politicians acting with good common sense. I've got to say, most politicians in Parliament, all they want to do is bring down Boris. That seems to be the ultimate aim here. They haven't thought beyond that. It's all about bringing down Boris. I was listening to one member of the general public, an oldish lady, retired. She was talking about how long she's been voting, and she had she has a high regard for Boris Johnson, and she has a high regard for wanting to get out of the EU, and she gave very clear reasons why. And because she started leaning towards Boris and favouring Boris, the commentator shut her off. I mean, the person, he just absolutely felt he couldn't allow this woman to say any more. She was a very pleasant old lady, just talking very nicely about our Prime Minister and what she felt he was trying to do, which is he was thinking of the country. People have got a very strange, its politics are not like they used to be. It was very clear at one stage how Labour felt and how Tories felt and how Liberals felt. The situation has become very confusing. The Labour leader does not want to have an election because he doesn't think he's going to win it. But he'd rather try and screw up the whole system of looking after our interests as a country. And that's how he's thinking. I would say, quite honestly, that we will find a way through this. I'm still hoping we're going to be out of the EU by the end of October. But if we're not out of the EU by the end of October, soon after October, there will be an election, if there isn't one before, and there will be a winner, and it will be Boris Johnson. It will not be Labour, it will not be Liberal. One thing which is very interesting is Nigel Farage of Brexit, the Brexit Party, has been relatively quiet. And I think there's every likelihood that there will be some kind of arrangement between the new Conservative Party, let's call it the new Conservative Party, and the Brexit Party. Now, everyone describes Brexit and the Brexit Party as right wing. I'm sorry, but I can't agree with that. They are just a party that are very clear on what is good for the UK. Very clear on what is good for the UK. They look at the facts. They don't try and water them down. They don't try and listen to them in a way that suits what they think should happen. I find it... I was listening to Question Time with Fiona Bruce last night. I mean, the leader of... the Foreign Secretary or the opposing Foreign Secretary for the Labour Party was making no sense at all in terms of what she was saying Labour would do if they were in power. She was talking about they would go to Brussels and try and negotiate a deal that they wouldn't believe in, and when they got back to the UK, they'd be voting against it. I mean, I don't understand how people can be in a position of authority in the opposition and make stupid statements like that. Quite honestly, I think the British public are fed up with politicians generally. But Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, has been scathed as a liar and a buffoon and a dictator. But this is all coming from the opposition parties, not coming from the general public. And I think most of the general public, when it comes to an election, will vote for Boris Johnson. That's my view. We certainly would have preferred not to have an election, that's for sure. We would much rather have had this whole process come to an end so we can get on with our domestic issues in the UK, and obviously started working towards building good relations with the EU and with other countries outside the EU going forward. This obviously is going to take a little bit more time, because we have some absolute idiots in the opposition parties that just do not understand the way the world is moving. My position is very clear. We need to get this election organised, get behind Boris Johnson, and get this process finished. Jeremy Corbyn and his bandits and these other people who call themselves politicians caring about democracy and the way this country is going need to be basically voted out of the House of Commons. They need to go. They need to really go and get out of politics. They are not politicians. They are anything but. As I said, all they want to do is they want to remove Boris Johnson, but they don't have a plan beyond that. That's all their plan is, remove Boris Johnson. Johnson is up in Scotland at the moment talking to farmers, talking to... Let's sort this problem out. Let's get Boris fully involved as our Prime Minister with the authority, with the backup, with the skills to do the job properly. Let's wipe these Corbynites and liberals out of the road. Because we've got to get our country back. We've got to get our country back. We've got to get our authority back, and we've got to start working hard to get business back on track in the UK. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.